All right, welcome to the very first episode of the Victors Weekly, brand new podcast from Maize Blue Review. I'm Trevor McCue, joined by my friend Nick Coston. Coston, I said your name weird. Nick Coston.
It's actually Coston.
Is it Coston?
Yeah, it's a long. Yeah, we anglicized it funny.
No.
When you want to cut and start over?
No, it's live. We can't.
I know.
But 10 years and you've never corrected? Like,
I go with the flow, man. I'm a chill guy.
You know, I guess
it looks like it should be Coston.
Your other message board nickname, though, I guess that makes more sense with the pronunciation, right?
Yeah.
All right, whatever. All right, Nick Coston. That's going to take me forever.
Don't worry about it.
Obviously, big Boutros among the Michigan message board community. We did an episode on Good Afternoon Football. Dennis allowed us to fill in. Mm-hmm. We both enjoyed it. I've been trying to get Nick to do this for a while, and now we're going to try and do this every single week. So our vision is a show for Michigan fans who want more than the hot takes and the headlines. Nick and I dive into numbers, storylines, and some nuance. I think we both kind of felt like this is something we wanted or would want to watch, and maybe there's a void that we could fill in. So we've been doing this for years, basically on message boards and texting each other, and we're basically just bringing here and recording. So Nick, first off, thank you. I'm super excited.
Trev, likewise, thank you so much. The way I described it to a mutual friend of ours was that on shows like these, you generally want one of two recipes, either an extreme ball knower who is completely dry and data-driven, and then his counterpart is a screaming hot take, or two medium temperature ball knowers. And we're the second one. We've got some stats, but not too many, some takes, but not too many. So I think we're going to have a good time.
Yeah, I don't think I could pull off the Stephen A thing. Although I saw today he's making like $50 million a year, so maybe that is the correct avenue to go. So, all right, we are going to look back, and we went on the show was the day before the Oklahoma game. That's and right. We set forth our theories and thoughts on what the keys to the game were going to be. I think we're going to debate on whether we were wrong or right, because I think you can make the argument Michigan has shown what they've said and what they've done against Central Michigan that they know they were wrong in terms of maybe things they were trying to do or not do against Oklahoma. And we can, get into where things went wrong, where they didn't. But I think there is a clear lineage here in terms of the Michigan identity and where things are going forward between Oklahoma Central and then obviously now this Nebraska game.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the bulk of the conversation that we're going to get into. But the premise is we talked about what we wanted to see from Michigan versus Oklahoma. We saw the opposite, and then there was a sort of a public acknowledgement of that happening and a course correction versus Central Michigan, obviously an overmatched opponent. But basically, the premise today between you and me is going to be, was that a good thing or a bad thing? Was it a red flag or a green flag that Michigan took a game plan from Oklahoma and said, wow, that didn't work. Let's try something that works. And, a relatively rare, I'd say, in the college football space, public acknowledgement of a misread of the game plan. And so how much of that can we trust and how much of that can we expect moving forward? That's what we're going to have to wait and see.
I'm still struggling with the candor of this staff at times.
I agree.
Biff is his own animal and fantastic. He is such a breath of fresh air, in all honesty. He gives me maybe Mike Leach vibes is the best way to put it. He's just so comfortable in who he is and being himself. And just, I don't think he could do coach speak if you demanded it of him. Right. You were able to get sleeves on him.
Yeah, barely.
Barely. Yeah, he was taking.
He made us think about it.
Yeah. But no, even, the submarine stuff around fall camp still exists to a point, but it's nothing like the Harbaugh era. And
and I think that is where we still have limited data on Sherrone Moore. We're still wondering to ourselves, is this going to be something that we point to as a fundamental strength and a building block for, something that distinguishes Sherrone Moore from Jim Harbaugh in a positive way, or is this something that, has taken a step back? I think that's what's still TBD, right? Because not to jump around the conversation a little bit, but I think as it pertains to that Oklahoma game plan offensively, right? Sherrone Moore still just a handful of games into his head coaching career. And I don't think it would be untoward or inaccurate to wonder aloud, okay, last year, coming out of the second bye, Michigan destroys Northwestern to get to bowl eligibility, 6-5. Then they go on the road into Columbus with all of the offensive issues that we knew about from the beginning of the season till the end. And they won that game 13-10 in Columbus using a particular, let's call it road game plan, like arm's length, boxing match. Don't let him get any hits, and you don't throw any haymakers yourself. Repeated the game plan again successfully versus Alabama in the bowl game, and so you're coming out of the 24 season having miraculously turned it around, getting to 8-5 on the strength of a game plan that you or I or the average fan wanting to see Bryce come in. He's a 5-star. You want to see rip it, but perhaps understandably, Sherrone Moore, with his limited data set and his limited sample size as a head coach, he said, well, I'm going to go on a big road game, a big game away from Ann Arbor. This is what got me to the dance, and this is what got me my wins in Columbus and against Alabama, so I'm going to try it again. And it didn't work, right? So that, I think, is, to your point about the candor being a difference from the Jim Harbaugh era to the Sherrone Moore era. I think we're just seeing something play out in real time that is transparent, and it's and to people who like to break stuff down, it's refreshing, right? It's nice to have access to
Makes
more
my job
information.
easier, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. It remains to be seen, how it's going to translate on the field. And this week, impeccable timing is another big road game.
Yes. For me, this is the last thing I want to say on that before we start to get into the Oklahoma piece.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a big Moore defender. I believe we talked about this briefly. If not, I know I brought it up with Josh on Hail to the Podcast. At his ability to quickly identify a problem and to have some self-awareness and willing to admit mistakes and quickly correct, whether it was from the moment he was hired and his willingness to say, hey, recruiting is going to change. And there was a clear vision and plan. We saw the implementation. We saw the success. Yeah. For me, what you just talked about with that tide turning in the bye week at the end of last year, to me, that was less about game plan and more of an acknowledgement of a lack of identity and a loss of culture. And
yeah. That was a remarkable turnaround of buy-in. I mean, I know you know about the tenor in the program. Specifically, I think it was following the Texas loss, right? Maybe Texas or maybe Oregon, where there was a widespread loss of concentration, let's call it. And ultimately, to Sherrone Moore's credit, he got that back in spades, right? After that second bye.
I think, and we know the players came out and said, look, this is our last home game. This isn't us. We don't want to go out like this. And they had this renewed focus on how important beating Ohio State was, right? And we saw that play out. And I think if I could find a red flag from that process, when he took over from Harbaugh, there was kind of this mentality of, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. Pure continuity. Right.
And a lot of that was forced on him by us. Let's be frank. Like, we wanted, okay, we'll take the change, but it's got to still be the same, right? This issue we were having with Jim Harbaugh breaking up with us, essentially, right? The Michigan fan base. But what he thought was, I can keep everything we do well on offense, and I can put Kirk in. And now what he's been doing in small doses in terms of the passing game, he can implement at a higher level, and we can become more explosive. And it's obviously not that simple, right? And I think what was acknowledged, and we'll talk about this later, this feels similar to that, an acknowledgement of whether it's the O-line or whatever, like, I can't keep thinking once this is good, it's going to stay good.
Right.
I can't keep thinking I can go into Oklahoma and play this certain way, right? I have to be willing to adapt quickly. And I know some folks have said, whether it was Chip or Biff pressuring him to get him to change his mind, or whether it was his own, epiphany, I don't care, because either scenario is good for me. Either he quickly saw the problem and flipped the switch, and I think that's great, or he was willing to listen to his staff and take their feedback and advice and make the changes. Either one is fine for me. But again, we need to see it against Nebraska. Otherwise, it's just talk.
I also don't care. And I think if a single game sample size against an overmatched opponent can help with anything, right? I mean, the roster of Central Michigan was never going to keep up with the roster of Michigan.
Sure.
But to your point, the offense that Michigan ran against Central was a Chip Lindsey offense, was it not? And I think that says something in and of itself, is that this is going to have the DNA and the fingerprint of a different offensive coordinator than the one I was for the last 3-4 years. So my most concise version of the red flag, green flag question for transitioning from the Jim Harbaugh era to the Sherrone Moore era is, if it's red, the question is, why does he keep making new mistakes? But the green flag version is, he never makes the same mistake twice, right? He learns from everyone. And so, look, at the end of the day, this is a very green staff led by a near rookie head coach. And he got his feet wet as an interim in the 23 championship season. But last year was like a year zero for him as a head coach. And so I think that's the short version for me. But I think you want to get into sort of a look back now at the Oklahoma game.
Let's talk about the discovery.
Yeah,
where we're headed, right? So, and our own where we were wrong.
Yeah,
we talked a lot about John Mateer, and but a lot of data points about what kind of quarterback he was under pressure in a previous life at Washington State. Why I felt that translated based on some numbers from their week 1 game, right? And what we saw was, I think the things we were wrong on. One, when I saw the offensive line for Oklahoma was going to be 4 new starters, a guy moving, swapping guard spots, 2 freshmen. I'm like, okay, cool, great. Turned out they made the right decision.
They made the right moves. Yeah,
they made the right moves. And whether we'll never know their full plan between fall camp week 1 and week 2, but whatever that plan was, they executed it. Michigan's defensive front was not creating they had, I think it was 11, do I have it in front of me? 11 pressures in the game. But there was never a lot of moments other than like maybe the missed sacks, right? But like, he never looked crazy uncomfortable to me, right? And there was a level of drop off. He did only complete 50% of his passes under pressure, which is what we expected, right? The problem was he was only sacked once. That should have been 2 or 3 times, ideally. And he wasn't, most of his scrambles weren't under pressure. He was, in fact, he was throwing balls away to avoid the mistakes that we needed, or Michigan needed him to make. He wasn't making those. He wasn't getting trapped into those mistakes. And the 5 throws he did complete on the 10 pressures went for 104 yards.
Right. His eyes never broke from downfield. He was a maestro on the move. I mean, completion percentage is one thing, but to your point, if the 5 completions went for massive gains. And so he was reading the defense the way that if you were an Oklahoma fan getting excited about the transfer, that's exactly what you were hoping to see in him moving a level up, right? You put it perfectly. The John Mateer from another lifetime was just that. It was another lifetime. And the expectation that anytime he faces a defense ranked above number whatever, he's going to fall apart. That didn't happen. And I think in hindsight, it was never going to happen, right? He was the most coveted Porter quarterback for a reason. They brought the offensive coordinator with them, a young, brilliant mind who really syncs well with the quarterback. The guy's 23, 24 years old. Of course it worked, right? It was an upgrade for Oklahoma in every sense. The teammates that he was throwing to, or the running backs he was handing off to, or the offensive line that he was passing behind, it all got an upgrade, right? And so the sense of a historical underperformance versus top-ranked defenses, it just didn't apply anymore. And that's why I would contend, and I know you and I talked about this before, is that this makes Oklahoma worth tracking from the Michigan perspective. This is not going to be a game. If Michigan had won in a blowout, then, I mean, that's a whole different universe, right? But then you'd say, okay, Venables maybe doesn't have it. And, these were all, he's riding out the string against a really tough strength of schedule, and it's not going to work out. Not the case, right? Now the narrative has shifted for Mateer, Arbuckle, potentially Venables as well. They've got a hard schedule coming up, but if they win against it, right, if they win 9-10 games, are we even looking back at Michigan's performance on the road, night game, Oklahoma against, what is that going to be? A top 12, maybe a playoff contender at Oklahoma? How does that success, if we're anticipating that, or at least putting it as a possibility, how does that change the narrative about Michigan's performance at Oklahoma? I think that's why it's worth tracking Oklahoma in the coming weeks, because it could make us feel a lot better. We have seen the number that I've seen a lot has to do with the Vegas lines, right, against the spread, ATS. And two of Michigan's first three opponents are just abundantly overperforming against the spread. New Mexico, obviously, is number one in the country in this, because I think they were 18-point underdogs against UCLA, and they blew them out. Obviously, Michigan's game against them in week one was a fine statistical performance for Michigan, but they kept the scoreboard close. And Oklahoma is already doing well by this metric. So you've got two teams that are off to really good starts, and Michigan's played both of them. And I'll leave it there for now, but Oklahoma is going to be worth tracking from the Michigan perspective.
I think the committee is trending to a place where, and I said this going into the game, where a close loss, to your point, on the road, night game, SEC opponent,
Bryce, you did say this.
All these excuses exist where, like, you could argue what they just did to Central will not be as valuable as the loss to Oklahoma in terms of their resume. No one's going to care that you blew out Central, right? Obviously.
Well, it just doesn't, it has nothing to do with the conference record. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
If
Michigan season's preserved.
If it's worth it, and again, this is risky. I'm not saying I would not endorse this if this were a strategy on purpose, and I'm not saying it's what happened. But is it worth it to lose a road non-conference game if you learn the ultimate lesson? This is a good segue, by the way. If you learn the ultimate lesson about what your team really needs to do, and you never apply that game plan again in the games that are going to matter for your conference record and your opportunity to, battle for a conference title.
I can tell you that players that were on the 2021 team and players that were very high up, I mean, I think Aiden Hutchinson even said it publicly, they don't beat Penn State and they don't beat Ohio State if they don't lose that Michigan State game, right? And if you don't want to lose, right? But I hear from coaches all the time, like, the lessons you can gain in a loss, as long as you don't let that game beat you twice, right? You can't see the hangover. And I think we can already acknowledge that's not happening because, again, it was Central, but in terms of like EPA success rates, whatever, it was the biggest win of the weekend, right? They did what they're supposed to do in that game. So I'm with you where I think this could pay dividends, and we'll have to start to see if it happens with Nebraska in terms of the lessons learned from the game. And then in terms of the playoff potential and how a committee may look at it, I'm still going to be very interested if there's that 9-3 Big Ten SEC team on the fringe versus a Big 12 Big 12 is a bad example because that actually is playing like a very deep conference right now, but maybe an ACC team goes 10-2, whatever. But I think the committee
or Notre Dame storms back. Notre Dame's 0-2 right now. If they win,
and I was going to say the writers at least and the people around college football have shown they want more of these big games, and in order to do that, you have to reward teams. To be honest, so Notre Dame's ranked ahead of USC right now. Right.
Is that true? In what poll? That's insane.
I thought I saw it. Anyway, my point is an 0-2 Notre Dame team that barely, was it 4 total points, loses these 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to, they can't be ranked. They're 0-2. Like, there was a past life. Well, yeah, of course that would absolutely happen. But everybody goes, look, that's one of the 25 best teams in college football.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about the record, which is an interesting thing as we move forward into
new era.
12, maybe 16 teams. Like, how little will the record matter, right? But yeah, I think where we're at now and connecting, how important this Nebraska game is, in some ways it's still the same boat I thought we were before, which is if you're 2-2 going into the bye, you have to probably win out. That's not a great environment. If you're 3-1 and you can say we split 2 tough road games, we won our conference game, and Bryce Underwood took significant steps in his development in the way we utilize him, and we're 3-1 going into the bye, that's a win. Like, Michigan should be ecstatic. But if you lose to Nebraska, and how you lose will shape the entire conversation about what we're talking about right now from a learning lesson standpoint, if you will. But
no pressure, but this is probably the largest referendum on the state of the program in quite some time.
And the head coach won't be there. How wild is that dynamic?
Well, it's only going to serve to complicate the conversation, because that if Michigan wins, that there will be a significant amount of voices who will say it's because the head coach wasn't there, right? And if Michigan loses, they'll probably say he's a huge distraction.
They've had to tell people, guys, this was Moore's game plan. He was the one with the mandate for Bryce running. He designed the 2 design run plays. And he's already come out and said, look, we implemented a lot of Nebraska last week, right? There's this weird need to defend Sherrone because, that narrative exists because he wasn't there.
So just for my final word, my last word on Oklahoma, to serve as a transition into looking at Nebraska, I think that learning about the Michigan defense vis-a-vis Oklahoma is TBD. Because if Oklahoma goes on to rip it up, then we can look back and say, Zeke Berry got hurt. Jayshon Barham missed the first half. Michigan held its own, 24 points on the road. No big deal.
Adi gets hurt. Both tight ends are out. The excuse
if Mateer turns back into a pumpkin over the course of the rest of the season, might have to put a pin back in that game and take a look at something like interior defensive line pressures, or the linebackers weren't top 5 in the country like we thought. But TBD. It's all about the Michigan offense, isn't it? In that, again, we had this public acknowledgement of a terrible approach and a terrible game plan at Oklahoma. Too much training wheels, too much fear and trepidation in using Bryce Underwood, particularly his legs. Come out against Central Michigan and show exactly what every Michigan fan wants to see. And so the million-dollar question is, was it real? And what are we going to see at Nebraska offensively?
Yeah, because, and I've seen some Nebraska folks already identify, they're like, well, I mean, this is already overstated. You only had 2 runs that were designs. And my pushback has been, I didn't care about that from the beginning. I'm not even really that concerned with designed runs. I'm concerned with Bryce Underwood's ability to play free.
Right.
And to know that if the defense gives him an opportunity to run, that he can. There's a 3rd and 5 on the first drive. Now, granted, again, we're running against a central defense and not Oklahoma, but still, there's a 3rd and 5 where his first 2 options are covered, and Jake Garnera and Andrew Sprague open up a massive lane to the right for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he takes off, gets the first down and more. And that becomes a touchdown drive instead of, if he's sacked there or throws a ball into coverage that's incomplete, or even worse, throws an interception, but that's a field goal. So there's a 4-point swing for him just knowing he can run. And I think as the game went on, you saw the offensive line play improve. They were doing obviously sprint outs and some different things too to get him mobile and moving the pocket. But the run game opened up a little bit. And I think that's just simple. And this was my issue. Sherrone Moore made the case for Bryce Underwood being able to run in the praise he gave to John Mateer after the game. And on Inside Michigan Football, he was talking about what the running quarterback does to the defense, how it affects the run game, the pass game. And then right after that's like, well, we're not going to write. We can't risk Bryce. And somebody, David Chapman, brought up a good point. Maybe it's because it's Oklahoma and it's a harder hitting D and you didn't want that right out the gate and you thought you could win in this different fashion. But now, yeah, I think I don't care if there's a single designed run. He's shown he can get you nearly 100 yards rushing on 7 carries just by scrambling when it becomes available to him. And he got out of bounds and he slid when he needed to. I think there was one play where he kind of got wrapped up and hit a little bit, but overall he protected himself. And again, he's 6'4", 230. This isn't a fragile Bryce Young running down the field, right?
Yeah, I saw somebody make the point that actually the hardest hit he took, like square in the shoulder pads all day, was on the left-handed
shovel pass. Yeah,
the shovel pass to
he took
Justice
a pretty good hit
Haynes.
there.
Yep. He took it right in the guts. I think you make me think two things, and this is rare form for me, but I'm gonna say something sort of unambiguously critical of Michigan football. It's basically since the middle of the 2014 season, Brady Hoke's final year at Michigan, when Devin Gardner was benched really unceremoniously for Shane Morris, it feels like Michigan is the only power program that has, up until now, up until Central basically, actually installed and instructed its quarterbacks not to scramble. So to your point, the number of designed runs, QB powers, and Denard-shaped play calls, who cares?
Right.
Right? It is the non-banning of taking what is available on the ground that matters way more. And I think you said, what did you say? It was 7 scrambles for 109. Is that right?
7 for 96. He had
7 for 96, and one of the touchdowns was a scramble.
Yep.
The other one was
down play where he came back the other way. Yep.
Yeah, and so you've got 2 designed quarterback runs. One of them is a touchdown.
Yeah, they were both successful too. Yeah,
they were both successful runs. So it's I don't know what how to put the period on my sentence here, but I guess the second critical observation would be, if I were feeling glass half empty, and if I were feeling nervous or judgmental or whatever, how could you do a 180 on that perspective and that opinion of your quarterback in the course of a single evening, right? Because we got, as I think it was as recently as the Thursday before Oklahoma, Sherrone Moore was saying, and it was a quote that made me so itchy, because this isn't a sentiment that actually exists anywhere. He's not quoting Bill Parcells or something. If you run your quarterback, you better have 2. Nobody says that. Nobody says that. And so if watching Mateer scramble around really was that much of a light bulb moment, awesome. Then that loss was truly worth it. But I'm a little bit apprehensive that we could I shouldn't say we, but that there could be such a 180 in the course of a single week. Now, on the other hand, Central Michigan was not a scrimmage that didn't count. It was a real game. It was live. He wasn't wearing a red jersey.
Didn't need to
and
do
they
that.
did it.
They didn't need to do that to beat them.
Yeah. So there's just so much riding on this game. So many ingredients that people are just holding their breath and waiting to see if, is this just something that we pull out in Ann Arbor? Is this the new reality? We got to wait and see.
going to be annoying about a couple things. One,
Please.
I don't think it's a complete 180 because they got Bryce Underwood knowing what he can do and what he's good at, right? I think there hasn't been like, this doesn't remind me of RG3 getting hurt at Washington. And then once he came back, it was like, no, we can't run him at all. And now you're trying to turn a dual threat quarterback into a pocket passer and completely take that out. Like, they've acknowledged that his legs can be a weapon. There's just been this hesitancy to do it, right? And maybe there was a level of candor there that he was being too honest without being able to give all the information, right? He could probably say a lot more about his decision process where we go, oh, okay, I guess I get it, right? And
yeah. I mean, for one thing, the actual health of Mikey Keene,
right,
is forgotten in this conversation, but it's of particular interest to me. If it would surprise. What's that?
I don't fully buy that part of it either, though, because then you're almost that to me. Then you're saying that there's a risk analysis where the drop off to Mikey Keene isn't significant enough, and I don't think that's true. Even if Mikey Keene was healthy, you know what I mean? I get
it's clearly not true,
there.
But
you're right. The quote's out there, so I have to go based off that. But like, I just don't buy into it because then you're acting like they're the same quarterback, and they're not.
Well, you could certainly run the same. You could have run the same offense at Oklahoma with Mikey Keene.
Yeah,
but I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
No, and the last piece I wanted to say with Bryce in terms of like this analysis of him, right? The comps that are out there, and without getting into a much more deeper conversation about the subtle racism that exists when we compare quarterbacks at different positions, like, oh, he's Cam Newton, oh, he's Vince Young, whatever, right? He's never been labeled a dual threat quarterback because he is such a good pocket passer and good arm talent that happens to be able to run. He's not Vince Young. He's not Cam Newton. He's Josh Allen.
He's Trevor Lawrence.
Yes, that's the comp that exists. And that's the playing style, and that's the freedom he needs. And that's where, again, you get into the designed run portion. We are reaping. Dang, I said we again. You do this to me, apparently.
It's my fault. I look for the new viewers or newcomer, whatever. Like, it's going to take me a minute to pivot from lunatic fan to professional podcaster.
Yeah, put on the professor hat.
Yeah.
No, I think in some ways Michigan is reaping the benefits with Justice Haynes. See where I go here.
Okay.
Because of an Alabama offense that ran Jalen Milroe 170 times. Right?
Yep.
And that's not what anybody I think is calling for or thinks needs to happen with Rice, right? Because we've seen where Justice Haynes can be your lead back. Jordan Marshall looked better in the Central game. Can get into that. Jasper Parker, whatever. The end around plays. He makes those running backs better. And that element, whether you want to call it smash or not, but being able to run the football and then everything improves with that little bit of freedom of Bryce being able to run. And again, I don't know if we'll ever know the truth on if it was this big light bulb moment or how it fully came on. And honestly, we're operating without a lot of data because we need to see the Nebraska game first. But it's for me, it's as simple as this is just who Bryce is. You just let Bryce be Bryce, and that's okay. And sorry, last point.
Please.
The quarterback injury thing. I mean, we have to remember Sherrone Moore's mentor is Jim Harbaugh. And there are elements that are great that he's learned from him. There's elements that feel forced, the hitting the shoulder pads before the game on the quarterback. That doesn't feel natural to me. I don't care if he's comfortable, fine, but like that's something that feels forced. Harbaugh protected the quarterbacks significantly, and when he didn't, he saw Dylan McCaffrey get hurt. He saw Brandon Peters, both of these guys get their heads taken off running the football. And we will always talk about J.J. McCarthy's era as successful as it was in terms of rings, trophies, and what he accomplished and being the best quarterback in Michigan history, it was all done with some sort of leash on him, right? That the what if will always exist with him. And I think this is where, again, whether it's a 180, an instant change or whatever, we've seen these moments where I have to be different than Jim. This is one. Why did I went out and got Bryce?
Yeah,
I can't hold them back.
Yeah, it's a small sample size, but if we lean into and if we believe in one of the Sherrone Moore strengths, not making the same mistake twice, that is a really big opportunity to get something right. Let Bryce be Bryce. And to your point, again, I'll be quick about this, but
yeah, well, you don't have to.
Talent is talent. And I tend to fall in the camp or the bucket of recruiting exceptionalism and talent exceptionalism. And at the end of the day, 5 stars go in the first round, 4 stars get drafted, 3 stars UDFAs, right? I mean, that's the decade over decade math, is that recruiting does matter. And
more.
It doesn't matter that Bryce Underwood is 18 years old. He is your best player, and you just have to accept that. The best players on Michigan this year, and it's actually quite fun to contrast it with last year, right? Is that last year's offense? You had Colston Loveland, and that was pretty much it. You had Kalel Mullings. And this year, who are the statistical leaders? Justice Haynes, a VHT, a very highly touted recruit, right? Is the way they summarize it, like a top recruit. Donovan McCulley, wearing the number 1, top receiver. He was actually a top 200 recruit out of high school. Now, he was a quarterback at the time, but he had a 92 rating in the composite. Samaj Morgan, composite 4-star. Marlon Klein and Hogan Hansen, top tight end recruits, 4 stars. Bryce Underwood, number 1 player in the country. So at the end of the day, it's like you have to use what matters, and talent matters.
Yeah, as good as the Michigan run in 21 and 23 was in terms of these diamonds in the rough and the development, all of that's true. But Will Johnson, Aiden Hutchinson, JJ McCarthy, Donovan Edwards, like you don't do it without the Blake Corum, these high blue chip players, right?
The end of the day.
I want to get into the Nebraska preview, and again, this is my last pushback on you. You said it's all about Bryce, but I do think there's an element of this Nebraska preview that is not, and that's the quarterback again, and that's John Mateer. What we thought Michigan could do to make him unsuccessful, and now it's Dylan Raiola, and there seems to be this sentiment.
What have you got on him?
Well, so with Nebraska folks, the thought is pretty clear, and that's that if they try to pressure him, he's going to get the big explosive plays. He has a high completion percentage early in the year. He hasn't thrown interceptions. He's a quick processor. And just like Mateer, even if the comp percentage goes down 5 or to 50%, yes, baby Mahomes. I don't want to talk about that. I don't think I've talked about it enough. It's so cringe. I think the thought is they think with their receiving talent that Michigan's secondary is susceptible to the big plays, which is what was so costly for Michigan. Now, Raiola's not going to run. I think he has 8 rushes for 24 yards on the year. He is not a threat anywhere near what John Mateer was in terms of legs, but he's a former top quarterback, 5-star caliber kid too, played in Georgia, blah, blah, blah. If he's turned the corner this year, I guess we're going to find out in this game. That's, I mean, how many games of this as Nebraska had of this, where it's like the final get over the hump, where they felt like they were finally starting to turn the corner, right? But this is the biggest game for Nebraska in a decade, probably, if they win it.
How do you feel about the Michigan secondary going into this game?
I'm so torn on it because, sorry, I am trying to pull up more numbers. Jaden Sanders, I think, has been very good filling in for
revelation. Somebody said
And
he came in 7th on the depth chart, and he's
Lamar
risen all
Morgan
this
said
way.
that today. Yeah. Yeah. And, between the injury to Caleb Anderson, Shamari Earls, backflip faceplant injury taking him out, and then, Sanders' own camp performance, all of a sudden he's on the field of CB2 very early. Right. But he's very much a keep the big play in front of you corner. And they've allowed him to stay back off and allowed a lot of open space where the offense is kind of just taking what they can because it's there. And maybe that's part of the answer for this game. On the opposite side, Jair Hill is still, in my opinion, what he's been in the past, which is he makes incredible plays sometimes. And he's overall a really, really, really good corner. But, and again, back to the candor, it was acknowledged today that these double moves have been absolutely cooking, right? Against Central, he had somebody get by, and then in the end, it was a little underthrown. Brandon Hillman comes over and helps break up the pass. I think the safeties are playing well enough that I feel really confident too. Like Jaden Mangum has really, really come on in the last couple games. We know what Brandon Hillman is. He also showed an ability in the Central game he had a really good wrap-up play where he doesn't always have to give the huge hit, that he can get the tackle. TJ Metcalf has been awesome. Curtis is still available. I think they have the players there. But again, are they going to create pressure without sending too many blitzes, without getting too cute and creative? I thought, I think how Barham is used in this game will also be an interesting conversation because he just looked significantly better than TJ Guy or Derek Moore has this year. Rayshawn Benny had his best game, so that interior pressure, which I think was so key, obviously with a Mason Graham, was there, so that's helpful. I think all of that comes together. I think the defensive front has to be really, really good to help out the secondary. If the defensive front isn't doing what they need to do and we need to see Michigan count on its secondary, I think that's a problem. I don't think there's not a Will Johnston in that secondary.
Yeah. I guess for me, both matchup-wise and season trajectory-wise, the conversation about the Michigan defense is treading water, right? If Saturday comes and goes and it's Sunday morning and Dylan Raiola has either just thrown for 500 yards or 50 yards at home, then we got to update our priors, right? Like that. Now there's a new conversation about the Michigan defense. But going into this, for me, it's treading water, and it's entirely about the Michigan offense versus the Nebraska defense. As you know, 3 games now against 3 overmatched opponents, 1 neutral site game to open the season versus Cincinnati, and then 2 real stinkers. Houston Christian, who is of course Bad Mac. Nebraska, I don't know if I dropped off. You can let me know. Nebraska has not allowed 100 passing yards yet in a single game. Like I said, overmatched opponents, Cincinnati and then 2 stinkers, but they have not allowed 100 passing yards in a game yet.
I don't know. I'm torn. I'm worried I fall into the same trap with, sorry, not to go back to the last thing I just said, but because I didn't have the Raiola numbers and now I do, he's only been pressured 17 times this year.
Right. And we don't know if that's what distribution
16.
is that.
16%.
We don't know if that's a terrific offensive line that would be doing that against any defensive opponent or just completely overmatched.
The trap I get sucked into is 7-11, 63%, only 93 yards. He did have a couple touchdowns, but he had 2 turnover-worthy plays, so 11% of his throws were turnover-worthy. He was sacked 4 times. He took 4 points. 4 times
against Cincinnati.
No, on the season. So,
on the season.
Okay. 17 pressures, 17 dropbacks, only 11 throws. So again, back to that Bryce element of material element. Like there's throwaways, there's short scrambles, there's, mistakes that are made. When he does throw it, it's not overly successful. So again, it's like, oh, maybe there's an opportunity with pressure here, but like to think Nebraska doesn't game plan for that is crazy. Right. So Bryce is going to be the best quarterback they faced. There's no doubt about that. And we know, so the statistical thing, like I think they're going to run the ball well. I think Michigan can pass the ball well. It's that balance piece. This can't be the 2023 game where they really just kind of shook Nebraska out the gate in a lot of ways. I don't know how much. I'd be interested to know what the pressure is in Lincoln.
I guess
because this feels like such a huge game for them. Is that a factor? I've been in that stadium. It's a tough environment, especially early. But when you've lost the way they have in these close games for a decade and you haven't beaten a ranked opponent in 27 games, I think it's really easy that if something doesn't go their way early, that could be a tough thing to overcome. Like for Michigan, that first drive from Oklahoma, that touchdown, I felt it, right? Like it was like, ugh. Does that element?
Yeah.
I mean, now we're talking about the non-tangible momentum thing, but
yeah, I mean, in the other direction, you could point to a game that felt similar going in. It was Michigan going on the road to Illinois last year, where Illinois had sort of its renaissance team and had Michigan in the crosshairs after all these years, and it put it to them. Right. I think my short version of the Michigan defensive matchup would be this. I'm not expecting Dylan Raiola to win or lose the game. Right. Really? I don't think it'll come down to him. And if it does, that would update my priors on the Michigan defense. I think that there is a status quo flat matchup between those two units, essentially Nebraska passing and Michigan's, let's call it the back seven. I think that if Michigan picks him off 4 times, that would really surprise me in a good way. I think if he throws for 400 yards, that would really surprise me in a bad way. I want to know if they're going to convert short third downs. I want to know if they're going to run the ball with any sort of pace or regularity. I want to know about special teams. I think you said it was 27 straight games, but whatever. In recent years, in the Scott Frost era, Michigan, Nebraska often pivots on special teams on weird stuff. Brad Hawkins got a strip on Martinez some years ago. It was a 32-29 win on the road. That was a good Michigan team against a not very good Nebraska team, and yet, right? And this is all this and yet. And so it never seems to hinge upon that basic matchup of like 5-step drop, hit your target. So I'm expecting Michigan defense, Dylan Raiola, status quo for 4 quarters. I really think it's the other side of the ball. And it's what Nebraska can do in short territory. Can they run? Can they get a success rate on the ground, right? Can they go from 1st and 10 to 2nd and 4 with regularity? And can they convert 3rd and 2s on the ground? And perhaps ironically, given the game plan we saw by Michigan at Oklahoma, it's almost like not forcing Raiola to be the engine by himself, right?
I think you hit on an interesting element too, which is, I mean, we talked about this religiously during the Jesse Minter years, which was the bend don't break, the freedom between the 20s, and then we shut you down in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to argue as good as Nebraska has been this year, and even against weaker opponents, they're 74th in the country in red zone offense efficiency.
That is interesting. That's a good.
Is there an element of bringing in the 12th defender of the back of the end zone.
Yeah.
And is pressure there more likely to force the mistakes, or and then is it as simple as who settles for field goals, right? And, we start talking about the Ohio State game plan basically for the last few years. But
special teams are special teams feel like a concern that is not quite loud enough in this preview space, in that Michigan special teams have bled a lot of yards, turnover opportunities on returns.
Points.
So with the margin this slim, right? So in Vegas, it's Michigan 2.5 and SP plus, it's Nebraska by 1. That's a field goal. That's literally a field goal margin. Yeah. And those hidden yards, who bleeds more hidden yards, I think is going to really make all the difference.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate element of this too, because it's not as simple as like literally the muffed punt and the fumbled kickoff and those things leading to points.
Right. Those are bad enough.
Right. But you're not getting, there's no weapon from that either. There's, your special teams can be a weapon on offense if you're getting good returns, possibly points from it. Right.
Right. Right. You're not trading
field goals this year.
Yeah. You're not trading danger for opportunity. It's both dangerous and inopportune so far. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So the final point on their red zone offense, they were 120th in FBS last year. So is the 74 an uptick because of improvement or because of competition?
It's a good find. It's an interesting find. It is. Yeah.
So there's not. Did John Mateer win the game for Oklahoma? Right. Just a simple yes or no. Do you feel like, John Mateer won that game, right? I know
he only won. Yeah, on their offense. Yeah. He beat the Michigan.
In the context of, you just said you don't think Dylan Raiola, it's not going to be like he's the only deciding factor. It could come down to one of these weirder plays, right? I think about what Ewers did at Texas last year, right? And that was, the Texas-Oklahoma similarities were there for me. I don't think, Texas was a significantly worse loss in terms of what it exposed, but you don't think this is a game where it's like Dylan Raiola beat Michigan? Because
that would surprise me.
Or cost them, because the range of outcomes, there's not going to be
both would surprise me.
Game, and there's not going to be a 4 interception game.
I think he has a narrow range of outcomes. Yeah, I think he's going to stay out of the way. I think he's a competent guy. He's got pretty good pass catcher talent around him. They're not going to make him force throws. They're not going to make him hold on to the ball too long. But they're also not really going to let him cook. He's not a runner. He doesn't throw on the move. They don't call waggles, rollouts, weird stuff for him.
Yeah.
I need to see the run support on maybe like the second and third Nebraska offensive drives to sort of get my feelings locked in. If they have 2 or 3 drives in the first half of run, pass, punt,
right,
that's going to be a real bright ray of sunshine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if they have if they're breaking off 17-yard runs, very long night ahead.
Yeah.
Actually, I should say very long afternoon. I do think if we're going to get into, squishy stuff, I think it's hugely advantageous to Michigan that this is not a night game.
Agreed.
I think that if this were a night game at Nebraska, the line would be different and the prediction would be fairly clear, frankly.
Interesting. I don't know. And I always worry, like, okay, am I doing the letting the bias take over where I still just don't see Nebraska in that light yet. And I know Raiola is taking huge strides, and I don't know. yeah, like you said, you could bring in the squishy stuff too, the team and rallying around more suspension and all of that too. But yeah, the night game would definitely play more. It was so hot last in 23 too.
Yeah.
The way the sun hits parts of that stadium impacts the crowd. I know that sounds like ridiculous, but it's true. Like if it's going to be sunny, that's going to impact the crowds.
I mean, it's not the first time I've heard that, because my own mom has the theory that we lost the Appalachian State game in 2007 because of the weather. It was so boiling hot.
Yeah.
And these were country boys from hot ass North Carolina, and they knew what they were doing in that August sun. And we were all the whole Michigan team was hung over from a lazy training camp. So shout out to Mom for the weather theory. But I would say, let me just say one thing about bias, right? About is I feel that the Oklahoma game, what we put out there, right, on this show, like without, I didn't make a score prediction, but we got to be honest. We both went into that like, ooh, this line is tasty. I don't know. And Oklahoma, I mean, Michigan had a post-game win expectancy of 6%. Okay. Michigan got skunked in that game. Yeah. And so I do feel sort of cured of bias in the sense that I really have to see it now before I believe it. If we're going to go on the road, tough environment, the opponent has doubts, right, about the head coach from previous seasons, right? You could say this, a lot of the same things about Matt Rule that you could say about Brent Venables.
True.
And so I'm just not, obviously there's a slight advantage to Michigan being favored in this game, right? Like there's some expectation that Michigan will perform this time. But I would just say that I've been, the bias cobwebs have been cleared from my head, because I need to see, like I said, the status quo with Raiola is not going to win or lose game. If Michigan picks off Dylan Raiola 3 times, sacks him 7 times, I'll put my hand up and say, whoa, that was great. I didn't see that coming. You know what I mean?
Well, I guess kind of the last point and kind of coming full circle here, is this a game that Bryce Underwood wins for Michigan? Do we come out, and I don't mean, Mateer is considered a Heisman front runner at this point, so I don't want to say like that same type of narrative, but like the way John Mateer was looked at least coming out of that game, is Bryce Underwood the reason Michigan wins in this narrative of the identity found and the green light and all of that,
right,
just magnifies to an unbelievable level?
Right. Yeah, I think that Nebraska does not need one guy to win this game. I think Michigan does need one guy to win this game. I think if Michigan wins this game, it's because Bryce is him.
Wow. So there, the jump for a freshman quarterback, obviously, into a second year, the reason I supported starting Bryce so early this year, regardless of,
right.
I wish Mikey Keene had been healthy, because I think Bryce wins the job outright anyway, and that debate doesn't exist at all. But Raiola threw 13 touchdowns and 11 interceptions last year.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And his completion percentage has gone up significantly. He's not throwing picks. I want to believe that there's still a way to awaken that version of Raiola. I think the defense can do it. Maybe not to that level, right? Like, he's not going to complete less than 50% of his passes and throw three or 4 picks. I'm with you. I'd be shocked by that. For Michigan, yes, I think Bryce can absolutely be the reason they win the football game. I don't think he has to be, though. I do think, and this is where it'll be interesting from the narrative of the offensive identity changing, I do think there's a world where, let's be honest, as well as Bryce threw the ball against Central Michigan, they ran for almost 400 yards, right? Mm-hmm. The rushing game also found itself.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
So I do think there's a world where Justice Haynes, who is arguably one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the power conferences right now, Ahmad Hardy at Missouri was another transfer running back I liked a lot, having a huge year. I think Haynes and Marshall, who looked better in that
He looked
game,
great. He
you know?
looked great. I was really happy with his central performance. I think if anybody was sort of like in the doldrums for the first 2 games who just blossomed, it was him. I mean, he rediscovered vision, footwork, hole cutting. I mean, I was really happy with Jordan Marshall, honestly.
And 2 comments. This will be the last thing. 2 comments kind of touch on where I was going to finish up with. Maybe it's not Bryce for me. It's the receivers have dropped 9 passes. His completion percentage adjusted is like 16% for drops.
Yeah.
Right. So Salute RGS says no way we need our receivers to step just as much as Bryce. And Detroit Lions fan, I honestly wouldn't be surprised. Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry, cut from a different cloth. Thank you. Michigan wide receivers are unproven. Nebraska has a strong secondary. I don't know if unproven is the right word. I mean, I think McCulley can be used differently. I talked about this in my stock report. I knew he'd be the short, the intermediate, the digs, the curls, the easy, third down routes. I thought there'd be some more run on the left and some exposure there. Samaj is doing more than the gadget stuff at this point. The unproven point is Goodwin and Marsh, right? One of those 2 ideally is explosive in this game. But to counter my own argument, Klein looked way healthier than I expected, and Hogan Hansen is back. Those 2 tight ends with peppering in some receivers could be enough, right?
Yeah, for me, it's a longer conversation. It's not necessarily about the Nebraska game, but the A+ version of the Michigan offense this year, not waiting for reinforcements, portal or 26 class or otherwise, is Klein and Hansen on the field together, both 100% healthy, because they are exceptional tight ends when they're at full strength. And you can build the plane, so to speak, out of those 2 guys being primary targets, right? So we haven't. I don't think we sort of saw that last week. Klein might be still gimpy, and Hansen was just coming back. So if there's anything that like I'm failing to anticipate, and we check back in next week, maybe Hansen and Klein combine for 160 receiving yards, something like that. You know what I mean?
MSU game a couple of years ago, 2013. All right, do you want to give a score prediction or no?
I don't know. I'm debating that. I would favor Nebraska in this game.
Yeah. So you're of the
I'm
4.
I'm team SP plus.
I usually am, but I feel like the previous year data, I don't think he's found the perfect answer to the transfer portal element yet. I think once we're 6 weeks into the season and he's more reliant on current year.
Bill Connolly, you mean?
Yeah, the S&P Plus, the actual formula behind it. It's been more off this year, right?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll
see. But I'm with you. I tend to be. But I guess, okay, of the Michigan win big close, Nebraska win big close. You're Nebraska win close at this point.
Yeah, most likely is Nebraska win close. Second most likely, Michigan win close.
Yeah.
I have a hard time seeing a blowout for either team. If the Oklahoma, like, I don't consider the Oklahoma game a blowout, right? But we were thoroughly outplayed on the road at night, not even using the quarterback. And even that couldn't really creep past 11 points. So I think it'll stay respectable at least. I hope I don't jinx them there. Yeah. Come back next week, Michigan lost 38-0 or something, Yeah,
no, I'm with you. I mean, close game seems the most likely. I think, a blowout win for Michigan would be just an incredible riding of the tide coming out of Central, and Nebraska once again not meeting this moment or the pressure of it maybe getting to them, whatever it might be. But I right now I've the numbers I keep coming to, and I don't like it because it feels far too overconfident, is Michigan 24, Nebraska 13. And that's just too, it's too large of a margin for me to feel comfortable, but that's just what I'm coming back to. I think
you're bold. You put it. You're putting. I appreciate the courage.
Well, I have to. We publish our predictions every week anyway.
Oh,
so,
okay.
I think this could be.
I'm getting up to speed.
I think this could be as big of a game for Wink as it is Bryce. And
I don't think I agree. Nebraska doesn't. They don't. They run like an NFL light offense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like they should run stuff that he's seen before. I guess maybe that's part. Maybe that's what you're saying. Like he should be able to tee off here.
We
shouldn't get got.
So much of the confidence of this year was what Michigan discovered defensively in the second half of the Indiana game and how they finished the year, and just this assumption that I think I understand why fans made, and your point, the red flag. I feel like the staff kind of made it too, right? Where it would be out the gate and it wasn't. But I do think, as much as we've talked about the offense learning the lessons, I think the defense has too, and much earlier in the year. I think it happened, right? In terms of the pass rush and the Makari Page, Zeke Berry, Mason Curtis kind of flip that happened last year, and what that meant for not only just those players, but Jay-Sean Barham and some other guys as well. I think we're going to see that in terms of Barham's usage in this game, in terms of what happens with Cole Sullivan getting more reps and the usage around Rolder and Bowles and those guys, and potentially in the secondary as well, whether that means, again, I only need Rod Moore to play like 10 or 15 snaps to maybe provide some guys some extra rest if he gets out there. I mean, at this point, I'll believe it when I see it, but I just think there's an element of the way that versatile positionless defense gets used in this game, where it's going to be like maybe the light bulb moment that came in that second half against Indiana. It's not going to be the 4 picks of Raiola. I don't think. I'm with you on that. But I think it's going to be commanding enough that they can still have the green light for Bryce, but they can win running the football and taking what the defense gives them and winning field position battle. Because if they don't, to your point earlier, the special teams becomes a bigger factor, and then I'm really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, all right. You good?
I'm good. Yeah, I feel much more responsible after this one than after the Oklahoma one, because I look back and I didn't make a pick, but I was like very tee-hee, Oklahoma's not real. And then they were. So I think my conscience is clear here.
Yeah, Venables, that was a great showing for Venables, and I think that gets lost in all of it. I can't remember. Peyton Manning keeps popping in my mind, but I don't know why it would be Peyton Manning. There was a quarterback, maybe it had to be Orlovsky. That said there was a specific formation, and I know it was an MGO blog stuff. I showed it in my stock report. It's everywhere, where they have 3 defenders and it's clearly man, and then it's not, and it becomes zone. And not only does it become zone, but 2 defenders swap. And the quarterback was like, I played and I would have made that mistake. So for Bryce to not pick up on it, right? Like, Venables unleashed on Underwood in terms of the way he was discussing coverages. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable performance. So, and again, if they've learned from it, I mean, that game could serve as a massive development piece for Bryce moving forward. So, all right, it is Wednesday, which means our previews, Friday forecast, Maize Blue review over at on3.com will drop. Friday forecast will have full in-game behind-the-scenes breakdowns, players to watch, betting information, storylines, all of that drops on Friday. Dennis will be live with Good Afternoon Michigan, so make sure you're liking, subscribing, notification bell on the channel so you know when we go live and watch his coverage. And, of course, we'll have Hail to the Podcast Sunday. And I think Brock might be alone, but we should have a in-stadium recap from him as well. And then we'll be back midweek with the Victors Weekly. So hopefully not do the same thing we just did in this one, which is like, okay, we were
Right.
crazy wrong, but
Right. The post-mortem.
the post-mortem, yeah, hopefully there's some celebration of where we were right
Yeah,
on the next
exactly.
episode. Guys, do me a favor. Obviously, first episode, please drop comments. I know we've had a lot of live comments and the viewership has been consistent throughout, so I appreciate you. But if you're watching back on playback, please drop some comments on the show, your thoughts about the game, Nebraska, Michigan, Nick's inability to stop saying we, whatever you want to comment on.
Sorry, not sorry.
No, please provide the feedback. Would love to hear what you guys have to say. Then other than that, we'll see you next week. And like I said, hopefully recapping a Michigan victory as we head into bye week. But thank you for joining us. It's been the Victors Weekly.